Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast. Sometimes a company comes along and grabs everyone's attention.
Huh.
And today we're going to talk about one of those companies, Momentus, ticker symbol MNTS.
Oh.
They're really shaking things up in the world of space transportation.
Yeah, they really are.
And after a week like they've had, you might be wondering, is Momentus a stock to watch or one to avoid?
Right.
So let's talk about that.
Well, let's start with the news that really sent their stock soaring. Momentus just scored a contract expansion from DARPA worth $3.5 million.
That's fantastic.
But this isn't just about launching another satellite.
Right.
This deal is all about testing in-space construction technologies.
Okay, in-space construction. That sounds pretty futuristic.
It is.
What does that even mean?
Sure.
And why is DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, so interested in this?
Think of it this way. We're moving beyond just sending things to space
Right.
and starting to actually build things up there. We're talking about assembling large structures, maybe even manufacturing facilities in orbit.
That's incredible.
And for the Department of Defense, this is a big deal.
I bet.
It opens up possibilities for space-based infrastructure that could be crucial in future conflicts.
Yeah.
It's all part of this trend towards what some experts are calling space militarization.
So it's not just about exploring space anymore. It's
No.
becoming a strategic arena.
Right.
And I can see why a development like this would send MNTS shares up over 16%.
Absolutely.
But then on the other hand, Momentus also announced a $5 million stock, offering priced at $3.92.5 per share.
Yeah.
That seems a little counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They're riding high on this DARPA news, and then they go and offer more stock.
That's a great point. It might seem like an odd move, but think of it like this. The Momentus has these ambitious goals for in-space construction.
Yeah.
Right, but those goals require serious capital. This stock offering, which they're doing with AGP Alliance Global Partners, is essentially a way for them to fuel those ambitions. It's like they're stocking up on supplies for a long and challenging journey.
So they're essentially raising more money to make those ambitious plans a reality.
Yeah.
But what does this mean for folks like you listening who are already invested in Momentus or are thinking about buying in?
Well, this is where it gets a little tricky. When a company issues more shares, like in this stock offering, it can lead to something called dilution.
Dilution.
Basically, it's like slicing the same pie into more pieces.
Right.
Your slice might still be tasty, but it's going to be smaller.
Right. So even though Momentus might be growing and potentially becoming more valuable, your individual share of that value might shrink because there are now more shares out there.
Exactly.
That's a pretty important factor for any potential investor to consider.
Absolutely. And this leads us to the wild world of price predictions, where things get really interesting for MNTS. Some analysts are incredibly bullish, predicting the stock could reach as high as $2,465.23 by 2040.
Wow.
But then you have others like CoinCodex who are far more cautious, forecasting a drop to $4.53 by March 6th of next year.
Oh, my goodness.
So which is it?
Yeah.
A future space giant or a shooting star that's about to burn out?
I'm definitely getting some mixed signals here. Those predictions are all over the map. What should an average investor make of these wildly different forecasts, especially when we're talking about a company like Momentus that's operating in such a new and rapidly changing field?
You've hit on a crucial point. Long-term forecasts, especially in emerging tech sectors like space, are notoriously unreliable.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to predict with any accuracy where a company like Momentus will be in 15 or 20 years.
Right.
Think about all the factors that could come into play: technological advancements, changes in government regulations, even global events that we can't foresee right now. It's a lot of unknowns.
So should we just ignore those long-term forecasts altogether?
Not necessarily. They can be interesting thought exercises, but it's important not to get too caught up in them. Instead, I'd advise focusing on what we can actually evaluate right now.
Okay.
Momentus' fundamentals.
Okay, so let's talk about fundamentals.
Are they meeting their technology development targets? Are they forming strategic partnerships? Are they generating revenue and showing a path to profitability? Those are the questions that really matter in the short term.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's get practical then and look at some of those short-term indicators, particularly from a technical analysis perspective.
Now, this is where it gets interesting. Some key indicators like moving averages and the MACD are actually flashing sell signals for MNTS.
Sell? But wait, didn't we just talk about this exciting DARPA contract and their ambitious plans for in-space construction? What gives?
It's not quite as dire as it sounds. Remember, we're looking at a bunch of different signals here. On the flip side, the stochastic oscillator is giving us a buy signal. And even more intriguingly, the slow stochastic indicator suggests the stock might be in what we call oversold territory.
All right, so sell from some indicators, buy from another, and then this oversold territory thing. I think I'm getting whiplash. For those of us who aren't professional traders, what's the takeaway here?
Right.
What does oversold actually mean, and how should we interpret these conflicting signals?
Oversold essentially means the stock has dropped in price rather quickly, possibly more than its underlying value would suggest. This could signal a potential bounce back or correction in the price. However, I can't stress this enough, relying solely on technical indicators is a risky game. They should always be considered alongside those fundamental factors we discussed earlier.
So it's like having all the pieces of a puzzle, but you need to put them together to see the full picture.
Exactly.
You've got this exciting potential in the space industry, a company making bold moves, and a stock price that's, well, let's just say it's keeping everyone on their toes. Where do we go from here? What should listeners be thinking about as they consider Momentus and this whole world of space investing?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. But here's what I'd say. If you're intrigued by the potential of the space industry, and you believe Momentus has the technology and the team to become a major player, then this could be a company worth watching closely.
But as with any investment, it's crucial to do your own research. Don't just rely on what you hear on a podcast, even one as awesome as Investing Talk Podcast. Dig into Momentus's financials, read up on their competition, and most importantly, think about how this investment fits into your overall financial goals and risk tolerance.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions. The world of investing can be complex, but it's also incredibly fascinating. The more you learn, the better equipped you'll be to make informed decisions. You know, it's funny you should mention risk tolerance because that's something any potential investor in Momentus really needs to think about. This is a company operating in a brand new sector with a lot of unknowns. And that brings us back to the stock offering they just announced.
Right. We were talking about how it could potentially dilute the value of existing shares. Is that something investors should be really worried about?
Well, it's definitely something to consider, but you also have to remember that Momentus is raising this capital for a reason. They're not just hoarding cash. They're using it to fund those ambitious plans we talked about, like developing their in-space construction technology and fulfilling that big DARPA contract.
So it's a bit of a trade-off, potential short-term dilution for the possibility of long-term growth if those plans pay off.
Exactly. And that's where fundamental analysis becomes so crucial. We need to look beyond the headlines and the stock price swings and really dig into the nuts and bolts of Momentus's business. Are they making smart decisions with the money they're raising? Do they have a solid management team in place? Are they positioned to compete effectively in this emerging space market?
So we're back to those fundamental questions. It's not just about hype and speculation. It's about understanding the company's strategy, their financial health, and their long-term prospects.
Precisely. And here's where those long-term price predictions we discussed earlier can be both intriguing and misleading. On the one hand, it's exciting to imagine Momentus reaching a stock price of over $2,000 by 2040.
I mean, who wouldn't want to see that kind of return on their investment?
Right. But on the other hand, we have to be realistic. Trying to predict the future of any company, especially one in a field as dynamic as space, is like trying to predict the weather a month in advance. There are just too many variables at play.
So those long-term predictions are more like science fiction than sound financial advice.
Well, they're definitely more speculative than anything else. They might give us a glimpse of what's possible in a best-case scenario, but they shouldn't be the basis for any investment decisions. What's far more important is to focus on what Momentus is doing right now to achieve its goals. Are they hitting their technology milestones? Are they building strong partnerships? Are they demonstrating a clear path to profitability? Those are the signs that will give us a much better sense of their long-term potential.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about looking beyond the hype and focusing on the tangible evidence of progress. So let's put ourselves in the shoes of our listeners for a moment. They're sitting at home listening to this podcast and thinking, okay, this Momentus company sounds interesting, but is it the right investment for me? What advice would you give them?
That's a great question. And honestly, there's no easy answer. Investing is a very personal decision, and it depends on a lot of individual factors like your financial goals, your risk tolerance, and your overall investment strategy. But here's what I'd suggest. First, do your homework. Don't just take our word for it or rely on those flashy headlines. Dig into Momentus's financial statements, read their SEC filings, and research their competitors. Second, think about your own investment philosophy. Are you comfortable with the inherent volatility of an emerging market like space? Are you looking for short-term gains or long-term growth potential? And finally, remember that investing is a journey, not a destination. The market is constantly changing, and you need to be willing to adapt and learn as you go.
That's some really sound advice. It's all about being informed, being strategic, and being honest with yourself about your own financial goals and comfort level with risk.
Exactly. And that's what we're all about here on Investing Talk Podcast. We want to give you the information and the insights you need to navigate this complex world of investing. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, we're here to help you make smart decisions and reach your financial goals.
You know what else is important to remember? Even if you decide Momentus isn't the right fit for your portfolio right now, this whole conversation has highlighted something really crucial.
I think I know where you're going with this. We're on the cusp of something truly transformative with this whole space industry.
Exactly. It's like the early days of the internet or the rise of personal computing. There's so much innovation happening, and companies like Momentus are leading the charge. Whether you're interested in space construction, satellite technology, or any of the other amazing developments in this field, it's a sector worth paying attention to.
Absolutely. And for anyone out there who's feeling a little overwhelmed by all the information, all the technical jargon, all the conflicting opinions, remember this investing is a journey, not a sprint.
That's right.
It's about learning, adapting, and finding what works best for you.
And that's where resources like Investing Talk podcasts come in. We're here to break down complex topics, provide different perspectives, and ultimately help you become a more informed and confident investor.
Whether you're just dipping your toes into the market or you're a seasoned pro, we're all here to learn and grow together.
Speaking of learning and growing, I'm curious to hear what our listeners think about Momentus. Is this a company you'd consider investing in? What excites you about the space industry? What concerns do you have? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, let us know.
We love hearing from our listeners and engaging in these conversations. And while you're at it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this episode with anyone who might be interested in the future of space investing.
Yeah, tell your friends.
We'll be back next week with another exciting company uncovering the trends, the technologies, and the investment opportunities that are shaping the financial landscape. Until then, happy investing.